Starting all over again, Facebook world.
It's that John Lennon song, sometimes it feels just like starting over.
3 times the charm. So maybe this time it's 2 times the charm.
Maybe, and we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening,
Hello.
and good night, wherever and whenever you are.
Hello, Dr. Energy. How you
Hello.
doing?
I'm doing great.
So nice to see you.
It's great to see you. It's been, it's been a week actually, right? Last time we were live was last Tuesday, so
That's a long time. That felt
that's rare
weird.
for us, right?
I know. I felt like maybe you were mad at me.
No, we were just busy over here in
Yeah.
Ottawa. We were at my chiropractic office with Dr. Tony, so I'm just rearranging, getting comfortable here.
Yeah.
We were moving our office
Keep the
literally.
pants on, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
pants are on.
Don't keep
I got
them
my
on.
short, I got my and I am wearing shorts, but I am
All
dressed.
right. Just don't get too
Yeah,
comfortable.
yeah, yeah. So it's pretty warm here in Ottawa, so muggy. So we were moving our chiropractic office literally across the street. Like you could look out the window and see the new office, and we were just carrying stuff across the street. We had to paint and get everything ready and set it all up and set it so we were ready. So we basically closed last week when I finished my hours last Monday. We were closed all the way through the rest of the week, and we reopened yesterday and in the new space, and it felt a little discombobulating to be in a new space, figuring out the flow and introducing our patients to the new flow, where things are at, and all that kind of stuff.
And you started right away, right? You finished and you had patients like the next day.
Yeah, it took us right up till pretty much Sunday evening to finish, just to get all the small finishing touches, little touch-ups of paint here and there where we'd nicked the wall, moving stuff after we'd already painted and that kind of stuff, and smudging the areas, just bringing in some good vibes and all that kind of stuff.
I was going to make a joke and say after you painted, you smudged and you had to paint again. But,
But
well, while you were busy, I was sitting here thinking, all right, I'm not going to bother you because I know you're busy and I know we have a live and we have our scheduled business meetings, but it felt weird only being live like that. It was like, okay, well, I'm
yeah,
really happy that we're here today.
welcome to BU Network.
Awesome. Yeah. Love to have our friends and our members and our clients and new people hang out with us. So let's talk. Let's have some small talk
Yeah,
today.
it's interesting, and that's kind of what we've been doing for the last 10 minutes or so, 12 minutes. And it's interesting. I was talking to a friend the other day, and who's more of an introvert than myself, because I'm clearly not. Although I do like my personal time, but I'm definitely not an introvert. But they were saying that one of the positives for them over this whole business of the last year and a half has been that they haven't had to engage in small talk, which can sometimes be painful and awkward because they're not at work. They're working from home, and get on a Zoom call or whatever, and away they go. So it's quite interesting. Personally, I miss it.
Miss which part?
The small talk. I think it's I don't. I
I'll
don't
give you my
always.
ex-husband's number. That's all he
Yeah,
knows
yeah.
how to do.
I don't always love small talk. I love to have the deep conversations, the more in-depth conversations worth having, like we have here on BU Network. And I also have recognized, especially over the last year and a half, but even before that, just how important the small talk is as the bridge to developing those deeper conversations.
Boom.
Bum, bum. So if you think of small talk as bricks in building a foundation, one or two bricks isn't very many. But when you start getting 30, 40, 50, 90, 150 bricks, now you're starting to build something. And the reason I mentioned some of those numbers like 30, 50, 150 is because there's some research that actually shows that after about 30 hours of small talk, we have built a casual friendship. After about 90 hours, we've built a little bit more accessible friendship. And then after 150 hours plus or thereabouts of small talk and connecting with people, we are actually building deeper, more meaningful relationships. So I find that very interesting.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I'd like to talk about a quote that we're going to post, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
You're very skilled at so many things. So here's another notch in your belt about small talk, because small talk is a social skill. It's a social lubricant that fills the void between uncomfortable silence and a productive conversation. It's informal, polite, and often revolves around unimportant things. It helps gauge the mood of the room and the tone of a discussion with a few brief interactions. Small talk not only fills the white space, but it also connects people. That's a quote that we're going to post, right?
Already, already posted.
Done and done. You are so cool at that.
I had it
Let's
all ready.
talk.
I had it all
I
ready to
know
go.
it's oh, because we do plan a lot of this stuff.
Some of it.
Yeah, we're here and we like to engage in this conversation with, I was going to say in reality, but like in real time, right? Like it makes a lot of sense to put us and our information into the science about what we're delivering and
Right.
talking about the science of small talk. Why does it matter? We talked about it's a social skill. Do you think it matters?
I do now. There was a time when I didn't think small talk was all that important, that I wanted to just get right into those deeper, more meaningful conversations worth having. And over the last, like I said, especially the last year and a half, but even for a little bit time before that, I realized how important it is to engage in the small talk, to gauge the energy of the room, as it were, or to gauge somebody else's energy, where they're at, and how deep can you go in a conversation with somebody. Because it's kind of like, networking with somebody, right? If we try to sell them everything we have the first time we meet them, it's going to be like, whoa, that's too much. So we need that small talk. So we need to introduce, our job is not to get them from A to Z or A to Z the first time we meet them. It's maybe only to go A to B or A to B to C. And to help them make that journey, to lay it out for them, and then it's up to them to take the steps. So that small talk is so much more important than I ever thought it was. What about you?
And yeah, and you want to take your small talk and turn it into important conversations.
Right.
We have small talk with each other like we did yesterday. Like your
Or
hair
just
grew.
exactly. It grew. It's only been a week, but it's already grown out. And
Last time I
you,
saw you.
right? And last time I saw you, you hadn't yet had your hair done, and it looks beautiful. That ash gray is
Thank
really
you.
nice.
Thank you. I'm working on it. It's a work. And I don't like to say work in progress, but it's a work with progress in different steps. It's like a
Right.
process, like our course, right? There's a process to everything, and there's a
Right.
process to growing gray hair. So any of you men or women that are listening or watching and you've grown your gray hair, throw us a chat there. Give us a message. Tell us, how long are you doing that for? I think I'm growing my gray hair since February,
Something like
maybe
that.
six months now. And wow, that's a journey. You talk about how do you stick with it's easier to lose 18 pounds than it is to grow out your gray hair. Let me tell you, it's easier to be fat and get skinny than it is to like just go, oh, I'm going to grow my gray hair. How
Right.
difficult could it be? I just sit there and let it grow. Yeah, it really plays on your like confidence, and it really works on your self-confidence. Like, does
Right.
that look good? Wow, you got to be tough as nails to do this. This is not easy.
It's challenging because it plays with our self identity, right? We've always pictured ourselves as in a certain way. Like even myself with receding hairline, and it's going a little thinner in spots, and yeah, there's some gray in the sides of it as well. But I always, I have I have pictures of me from about 30 years ago with hair down to down to here, and the part going all the way across like this, and it's like so I sometimes still see in my own mind's eye that, but clearly it's not. So it messes sometimes with our own self-image, our own self-identity, and to progress along with that process, right? We can have a what, the how can be challenging sometimes, right? And having a proven process for it, like growing your hair out or creating a presentation or creating a speech or whatever it might be, the what is usually the easy part. Sometimes the how is where we trip up a little bit.
So true. Well, I spoke to a couple of women, and I joined a group of 32,000 women. I joined a group of 13,000 women. We're talking about, like, I have 40 something thousand people at my disposal at the
Right.
click of my phone, because it takes that kind of support. You know, someone will say, "Oh, look, I did it. It's easy." Having done it is after the fact. Some people actually grow their hair and then they recolor it again and they go back because somebody said they looked old or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
The support is important, just like a coach, just like putting together a presentation. When we decide losing weight, releasing, I don't want to say lose it because then you find it again,
Right.
but releasing weight, when we make a decision to do something, just like small talk, it's important to have people around you that are skilled professionals who've grown out their hair, people in front of a camera, people who have a friend, at least one friend that has told them something, people that can withstand controversial comments as we are
Right.
subject to being in the limelight.
Well, you know, it's interesting. The process, the journey is almost, I'd say, in fact, I would say the journey is more important in most cases than the destination, because it's the process that we go through to get where we're going that is where the real change happens. And sometimes the incremental change is so small, we don't even see it happening. But then somebody who hasn't seen us for a while, you know, say 6 months or later in the process, or a year or 2 years later, they go, "Oh my God, you've changed so much." And we're like, "But I'm still the same person." And there's that great John Lennon quote or lyric from his song, right? "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans," right? So that life is going on around us while we're going through this process, and it's so important to have that process in place.
You're absolutely right. Let's give some guidelines on small
Okay.
talk. Let's see if we can. Let's jump to conversation starters.
Okay. Go
Lots of
for it.
people do this. Okay, every single morning I ask my husband about the weather. Like that's his job. He's my weatherman. So then, oh, he looks at an app. I could look at it too, but I like him to tell me. So I think we can talk about weather. I'll give three, a list of
Sure,
three,
sure.
and then let's talk about that. So weather, current events, and food. Pretty important topics. I talk about those every controversial topics like politics and religion. These are the things we talk about at home. We don't always talk about them out. I don't mean to be out. We don't, just depends on
Right,
who
right.
we're having that conversation with, because we don't really want to upset too many people. You know what they say? Don't talk about religion, sex, and
Politics.
politics. So, yeah, we try to follow that rule if we can, not to
Yeah.
upset people. But
Well,
we
okay.
get into it at home.
Well, you know, the weather, the current events, and the food, right? Everybody wants to talk about the weather, current events, you know, what's been going on for the year and a half. I think enough of us have had enough of what's been going on for the last year and a half, and we're ready to see the backside of all of that and wave it goodbye. In fact, forget waving it goodbye, give it a good kick in the butt on its way out the door. And food, we all got to eat. Everybody loves talking about food, their favorite restaurant, how, you know, all those things, what they ate for dinner, what they're having for breakfast. You know, how do you know if somebody's a vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you.
Oh my
Right?
God.
At the risk of pissing off vegans, but you know,
Yep.
it's that sort of thing. Like CrossFitters, how do you know if somebody does CrossFit? Don't worry about it, they'll tell you, right?
Give
So
it 2 minutes.
yeah, just give them 2 minutes and they'll tell you, right? Enough about you. Enough about you talking about me. Now let me talk about me, right? That kind of thing, right? So the weather, the current events, and food are easy topics to just start talking to somebody and starting to build those base bricks, those simple building blocks to the foundation of a relationship. And it's an easy way to start to have some point of connection with somebody, and then the conversation, and then it provides jumping off points for the conversation. All that stuff about politics and religion and sex. Once you get to know somebody really well, you can then have those conversations. But at the beginning, those are some pretty deep topics.
Right. You can not necessarily build friendships with those topics. It depends on how people react. You know, we're open. We like to talk about it, but let's talk with like conversation starters.
Personally,
right?
I think we should talk about politics, sex, and religion in public way more than we do, but it needs to be in a discussion with an openness to different points of view,
Right.
rather than confirmation bias where people are
Yes,
just
yes,
repeating what we
yes.
already believe, and
Right,
being able to
right.
have an intelligent discourse rather than just yelling louder than somebody else to try and dominate the conversation or get your point across.
Totally.
Intelligent discussion. And that's a big difference than what we've got going, the
Right.
polarity that we have going on right now in the world. So
Totally agree. Totally agree. So well said, Dr. Energy. Yeah, you want to talk about two or three other
sure, I'll
topics?
give you three more. So three more great conversation starters: hobbies, object appearance, although that can be a little bit of a touchy one, and family.
Oy
So
vey.
now again, those last two, object appearance and family, there's a line to tread there that you have to be careful with sometimes. We don't want to get too deep into oh, my family this, all the heavy stuff. Same with object appearance. We may not want to comment on somebody's physical appearance. Something like, hey, your hair looks amazing, or, whatever. Like I think that's pretty safe. Oh, I love that shirt. It's a beautiful color of blue. It brings out the blue in your eyes, or whatever it might be. Like that I think those are safe places. The more physical aspects of our appearance, that can be a touchy subject.
The other day, he was making me laugh. The other day when I walked into the hairdresser, she said, "Oh my God, I can't believe you look so good." And I said, "Oh my God, how did I look before?" She said, "4 months ago, nothing like that." I said, "Well, I like lost
Yeah.
17 pounds." She said, "It really looks good." I said, "I must have been a real porker. I must have been a real fatty." She's like, "No, oh, no, no, of course not." I had this blue shirt on one of the times I had my hair cut, and she took a picture, a side view. And the side view she took, I felt a little bit like husky. And I put the shirt on today for the first time. Well, maybe not the first time in 4 months. I might have worn it before, but the first time since I really got my weight
First
down.
time
And
I've seen you with it on it in 4 months.
oh,
So
okay. Thank you. And I really felt like, oh, okay, my arms will like there'll be a loose shoulder. When I wore it the first time, man, I was stuffing it like a sausage. So when she said that to me, like, "Oh, you look so good, you look so different," I felt like, wow, I must not have looked good. So you have to be careful. You're right when you give compliments to people. And I'm not saying anything because who knows who's going to listen to this. I'm not saying anything about the person who said it. I'm saying that
yeah,
it was a compliment,
yeah,
but I
absolutely.
must not have looked good. That's for
It's
sure.
funny you mentioned that. I actually had a similar experience a couple of weeks ago. We went into the office, and one of my colleagues from Cornwall was here and getting trained. And he was asking Tony a question, and he said, "Oh, what's Joe doing when he's not in the office?" and blah blah. And Tony says, "Oh, you can ask him yourself." And just as I walked in the room, I heard the question, and Tony's answering. You can ask, and he goes, and as he's saying, "What's he doing besides losing S ton of weight?" It's and because I've been in the last 2.5 months now, I do a 36 to 48 hour fast in the middle of the week every week. And so just resetting my metabolism, my immune system, all of that, and the insulin levels, et cetera, blood sugar levels. And what I feel for me is I feel more energetic, more vibrant. And pounds wise, it's only about 9 or 10 pounds, but I just feel more vibrant. I feel more energetic. I feel like there's more life force available within to be able to express in my daily life and to go about my daily life. And I think that's some of what your hairdresser was commenting on when they saw you, is that there's more vibrancy there, and that's so important.
Yes, thank you for that. Plus, I was wearing like a skimpy little top and little stretchy pants, so it looked like I walked in with less clothes and less weight, and my hair. So must have taken her by surprise. So when we do comment to people about object appearance, that's one thing I wanted to say about that. Family and hobbies. Now, hobbies are a good subject to talk
Yeah.
about. We talk about gardening and that kind of thing, and those are hobbies. And family, well, I have to tell you a story.
Okay.
I had a real. Do you ever dream something really vivid? Like
Oh yeah.
just it felt so real. Okay.
This morning, as a
So
matter of fact, but
yeah, okay. Well, I had this dream the other day, and when I woke up, I felt my face on my sister's face. And I felt her and she spoke to me and I heard her in my ear. And I thought, wow, that was real. And I thought about it for a few hours. I get up pretty early. So maybe 8 hours later, I thought, yeah, this was real. This is a message. So I called her And I told her, like, I felt you last night. You were talking
Right.
to me. You had your face on my face. Now, I wouldn't necessarily have this conversation with just everyone. Hi,
Mm-hmm.
Cindy. Thanks for being here. But when you have a dream that's so real, I feel like it's a message. We had a conversation that was so touching.
Mm.
Had I not picked up the phone to say, that dream was real and I'm not ignoring it, I have to talk to you.
Right.
And, her picking up, being available to pick up. She said, I knew
Right.
it was you. Of course I'd
Who's,
pick up.
I mean, but who makes a phone call anymore? Do people still do that?
And I didn't want to text and say,
Yeah,
hey, I
yeah,
had a dream. I
yeah, yeah.
really wanted it to be, I would have left a voicemail. Yeah, I
That connection.
wanted to make that connection. Not to say it's been like 20 years since we
Right.
spoke, or maybe 12, I don't know, 13, long time. Like we just don't get around to talking.
Right.
And that changed the trajectory of our future. That
Mm-hmm.
dream and acting and talking about family really made a difference. You talk about losing 10 pounds. I feel like I lost 20 pounds
Yeah.
because I made that phone call, had that conversation,
Right.
and it just lifted any ridiculous notion I was carrying around. So it's a good thing to talk about family and just get it off your chest. So I thought I'd do it
Exactly.
here live in Facebook land on the internet, so that way I would keep it private.
Right. And then so and if you know of a coworker or a friend, if you've heard that that they've got a son or a daughter, or niece, nephew, or cousin, or whatever, graduating from school, or you just got engaged, or just married, or they're about to have a baby, or just had a baby, those are great questions to ask. Hey, I heard you mention that your daughter just had a baby. Congratulations. How does it feel to be a grandma, or something like that, or like
Right.
those types of people. What grandparent does not want to gab as much as they can about their amazing grandchild? I haven't
Or
met one
seven.
yet.
As many as we have, we want to talk
Right.
about each and every one of them because they're all
Exactly.
special, and we want to be
Exactly.
able to do that. I remember once upon a time, Lynn and I were hanging out, and
Yeah.
Lynn has a granddaughter and a grandson, and
Yeah.
I remember saying, "What is it like to have a girl? Oh my gosh, it must be so nice to have a girl." And
Yep.
so then we get blessed. So let's talk a little bit, and I mean that. Let's talk a
Yes.
little bit about work and media.
Sure.
So talk to me about your take on, especially at work and media.
Well, it's interesting for both of us. Work is a little bit of a challenge for both of us because since neither one of us really, not
Has a
really,
job.
neither one of
Oh,
us has a corporate type of a job or an office type of job where we're in the office with a lot of people. We spend a lot of time talking to each other, either like this or planning stuff like this, right? So,
yes.
so that is a challenge. But I have worked in offices before, and you always have work in common. Now, it can be challenging to keep things positive because sometimes there can be a toxic work environment and people just want to talk about the toxic stuff. They want to talk about the stuff that isn't working. What if instead you had conversations around what you hope to do, what type of projects you'd like to work on, and it's just like spitballing, general, open type of conversations. Word will get around, and your boss, your manager, your whoever might hear that, or you could be hearing that from the people that you supervise, and it gives you an idea of what goals are available to you, what people who work with you and for you would like to achieve, and you can incorporate that then into their yearly goals or into promotions, or as you're assigning projects or asking for volunteers for projects. It's one of the ways to keep things a little bit more positive. So there's always work. If you work in an office type setting, whether it's on Zoom, remotely, or in the office, you always have work in common with your coworkers. There's always something there you can talk about. What
Well,
about
we can
media?
talk shop. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can talk shop because we can talk about podcasting, streaming, and we can talk with other podcasters about that. So what about media? That was your question. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What about media? Well, have you ever bonded with someone? I always wonder about this when we start talking about TV shows. I remember when my kids were little and they used to talk about TV shows, and I used to roll my eyes. And now I talk about TV shows. I'm like, did you see that? That was such a good series. Or did you catch that movie? Did you see? And
Did you see Sebastian Maniscalco? That's one of your
every
favorite
day.
questions.
Oh my gosh, I love this man. I mean, I just love listening to him. He cracks me up. Anybody who can keep you laughing.
And he's on tour again, right? He just kicked off a tour in,
Mm.
I think, Nashville. So
Oh, look at that, where Laurie is. Oh my goodness. Yeah, well, I saw him. We saw him live here in
yeah.
Toronto, and he was amazing. I just, yeah. So we talk about media. Not that we make it a big conversation, but sometimes
Right.
you catch something. Like, we don't get to watch a lot. I finished work last night at 12 o'clock.
Right.
There's no way I can watch anything. I was taking my last call at 11:30 p.m. And because that's when I scheduled it for.
Right.
That's what happened. So media does fit into our life a little bit. I mean, maybe there's sports, which is media, because you're a sports fan, right? So there are things that you want to cheer your teams on.
Well, I think podcasts. We talk a lot about, hey, did you listen to this? You should listen to this podcast or that podcast, because we're always looking for inspiration and new ideas of where and how to grow our business and how to connect with you, our audience. And so we're always learning and listening, because inspiration can strike from anywhere. So oftentimes the work and the media end up coming together, and they come from divergent paths and fit together. So when we talk about work, podcasting, live stream, et cetera, it's oftentimes about a podcast or a live stream that we saw and an idea. Hey, should we try this? Would it be useful, or is it a distraction? Do we need to pivot something, et cetera? So, you never know where your fellow Celine Dion closeted fan might be. It's not here. I promise you, it's not here. I can agree that she's an amazing talent. She's just not my cup of tea. And I
used to live down the road from her.
Right.
In
Quebec.
In Quebec, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit. Thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about small talk. Small talk and conversation
networking.
starting. Yeah, let's talk about networking, because a lot of people are doing that now.
Sure.
And we do it all the time. So some people, I remember people saying, I attended 15 networking groups, and I'm thinking, really, when are you following up? So let's talk about what happens in a networking group. Let's just go through the questions instead of me giving a personal take on it.
Let's give a little intro to networking, because most of the time at a networking event, you may not know the people that you've just met. You might have just met them for the first time. And if you just ask, what's your business? And they're just, most time people are just going to give you the name of the business. They're just going to go bleh all over you, right? You get off from one of the two answers. And you really want to try and ask open-ended questions rather than yes or no questions, so that you can, and we should maybe define that, because sometimes I think we take it for granted that people understand what an open-ended question is. An open-ended question is a question that invites the person answering the question to expand on their answer, that they can take it in any direction that they want. And I love that sometimes. Sometimes that's why I love table topics and Toastmasters. Sometimes I'll take the question and I'll pivot the question, and this is a skill to learn, to pivot the question, and we see politicians do this all the time, to answer a completely different question or not answer the question at all. I was watching a thing with, I think it was the Minister of Health from Manitoba the other day, and he totally blew off the question and answered something that had nothing to do with the question being asked. And I thought that guy just lost a ton of credibility. So if you're going to do it, you have to do it skillfully and still answer some part of the question. So open-ended questions give you freedom to go somewhere where the person asking the question might not have expected.
All right, so let's give some examples of questions. For example, how did you land your current role? That's a good question.
Absolutely.
I'll read a couple. How's that?
Sure.
I'll give us a couple.
I'm going to post a bunch of them in the chat as well.
Okay, you want me to read them while you post?
You don't have to read them all, but you maybe expand a little bit on how you might answer some of those questions.
Right. I'll pick ones that I like.
One or two.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing about working at your company? Well, since I don't work at a company, I probably wouldn't answer it like that. I wouldn't maybe directly answer that question, but maybe I'd say, so I'd answer, what do you like to do when you're not working? That would be something I would tend to answer. And that would be because it's personal. And I'd like to give someone something personal about me. I'm from New York. I'm Sicilian from New York. My family consists of Sicilians from New York. I moved to Canada. I moved to Montreal. What do I like to do when I'm not working? Like to podcast. Is that work? Well, sometimes it's a hobby. Really depends on how you look at it. I don't feel like
yeah.
I don't feel like it's hard work. So, I would say that sure, that's something I'm learning
Right.
and continue to learn, whereas work might be a little bit different. I would tend to answer a question where someone says, "What are your plans this weekend?" I would really go with the safe questions. And I would like to be accurate. I don't like to skirt around issues that I think are controversial unless I think the person can handle it. So if somebody says, "Where have you eaten?" or "What have you eaten?" Sometimes that's boring. If I tell people what I eat, that's not a good conversation for people. Like my food is just totally not the conversation to have. But I'd rather talk about what I cook than what I eat. So,
Right.
I might go into that aspect of it because it's like a vegan when someone's intermittent fasting and you just don't want to talk to these kinds of people because we talk about not eating and all the things we do, instead of. So I think we
No, I'm
have to
happy to
look
talk
at.
about the eating as well as the fasting because I enjoy
Yeah.
eating as well.
Yeah,
So.
I enjoy eating too, but I really only eat one meal a day. So I think and then most people then they're curious about it, right? So I like to raise questions so that we have a dialogue as opposed to a monologue. So I like people to be able to tell me about them too. So I don't want to intimidate them with my answers.
Right.
It's not intentionally anyway.
So I like to go. So those are great ways to go. And these questions here that I've just posted in the chat, they're a great way to just start a conversation, especially with people you've just met. If you know people a little bit better, if you're in a group where you already know people a little bit better, you can ask some different questions. It all depends on the setting. I remember a professor at chiropractic college, and he asked some interesting questions. He would so we used to have to do this in our microbiology course. You have to look through a microscope, and when you're doing a bell ringer test in microbiology, everything under the microscope after you've looked through about 10 microscopes, everything starts to look the same. And the bell ringers basically identify what's on the slide under that microscope. Excuse me. And so because your eyes can get tired looking through a microscope, there are rest stations throughout the bell ringer as well. And this particular instructor, Dr. Jackson, would also put questions at the rest stations. And they were my favorite part of the bell ringer exam because they were fun questions. Stuff like, what was the greatest thing before sliced bread? Right? Because we always hear, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, what was the greatest thing before sliced bread? And you can have conversations like these. Make great table topics as well in icebreakers for groups as well. What color is a hypoxic Smurf? Now you have to know what hypoxia is. Hypoxia means lack of oxygen. So we turn blue. Our lips go blue, our fingertips go blue when we have lack of oxygen or hypothermia, right? It induces that state of low oxygen. So Smurfs are blue. So what color is a Smurf suffering from lack of oxygen? Those types of things. And my favorite question he asked was, is the person in front of you thinking about sex? And my answer to that was, I don't think so. They're not smiling. So you can ask these questions depending on the group you're in and the type of meeting it is, in a fun and playful way that gets people to open up and maybe loosen up a bit. You have to judge a little bit the people that you're asking the questions, but I like to have fun with it. That's me. That's the mischievous part of me, as our indigenous friends would call it, the coyote, the trickster, right? I like to have
It's
fun.
called take the temperature of the audience.
Yes. Yes.
As we do here.
Yeah, and that's really what small talk can help you do, is to take that temperature and find out then where to go deep. Who can you go deeper with and on what topics, and who can you not necessarily? Who do you need to spend a little bit more time with developing that relationship.
So one thing I want to mention about small talk, and I like to observe. Do you ever hear people not pay attention?
What?
Huh? You're talking to me?
You're talking to me?
You know,
Yeah, it happens.
you,
Oh my God, we see it all the time, right? Without getting into things, we see people not paying attention all the time.
and I wonder the exercise that, I know what I do before I engage with someone, and I know how I, take a deep breath and make myself present and clear my mind of other things and clear the energy so that I'm bringing, clean, positive energy to a conversation. And I've watched people talk themselves in and out of asking a question and never mind, don't answer me now. Well, then why'd you ask me in the first place?
Right.
I wonder what that message really is. Not that I can't give you a psychological answer to that, but I really want other people to think about this. When you ask a question and then you tell someone, never mind, if you're processing, so, oh, that was my process, that's one thing. But if you're not listening and then people aren't listening to you, it's like sitting at an Italian family dinner on a Sunday afternoon where everybody's talking and nobody's listening, except when they say, pass the lobster, pass the meatballs, that you listen to.
Pass
But we're
the
not
spaghetti,
really
pass the salsa.
Right, exactly.
Zugu.
Pass the
zugu.
Right? But that happens a lot. People are not listening, even to themselves. So I invite you to listen to yourself. Record yourself. Get on a phone call. Get on a Zoom. I mean, let the other person know, or just record yourself. Let's just somehow do that and see what it sounds like. Do you sound like an active listener? And if you think you don't, then the other person probably thinks you don't listen too.
Right.
And tell me how many people call you to talk to you. Yeah. That's another way to figure out if people like talking to you.
Well, that's one of the big things, right? Is when you say about recording yourself, like how many times have we recorded ourselves on video and or audio to hear how it sounds? Like I do this when I'm preparing my Toastmaster speeches, especially if it's going to be something that I want to, because I record everything that I do, and so that I can critique it as well, because I want to know where else I can improve. And okay, I like that. The timing on that wasn't off, because I know what my intent was, and so I can connect that with what the feedback that I got from the person who's giving me the evaluation in Toastmasters. I can correlate what I was intending with what they were seeing and hearing and feeling and experiencing, and then I can take all of that, put it together, and make it more be able to connect more, those types of things. So recording yourself is really, really useful. You'll be surprised how many times you use filler words like or start a sentence with so. It becomes, those are, real crutches to our speech. And if we just, instead of saying that word, just said nothing and paused and then started speaking, makes such a difference in our speech. The occasional or ah shows that we are thinking, especially if we're doing table topics or off the cuff speaking, like doing small talk at a networking meeting, then it's going to be, there may be a few more of those ums and ahs. But in general, if you're giving more of a prepared speech or prepared presentation, you would like to limit those ums and ahs.
And don't be afraid to have a second of silence when someone is speaking after they speak. For a few reasons. Number one, maybe they're not done and they're taking a breath because they need to come up for air.
Right.
Maybe you want to let that process. And also, it gives space. If I am jumping, as soon as you finish, chances are I'm not listening to you. Chances are I'm thinking about when is the next opening, like it's a soccer game and I want to kick that ball on the goal.
It's my turn to hit the ball back, yeah.
And if you think about giving some space, really listening to yourself and listening to the other person, that conversation might go a lot better. And this communication skill about, so can you explain to me what you heard? That's what I said. That's not what I said. Okay. And then we make sure that the point was understood. And then when the next person makes the point, we both make sure that we understood it. That's communication. It takes time. Like I often like real-time feedback. So how did that
Sure.
make you feel? What did you hear? Did you hear anything? Did I say anything that will impact what you do? Is there anything you'd like me to tell you about this conversation? Are you looking for feedback? I will ask people in real time, not tell me later, send me a message
Right.
right now. What would you like to know at this moment? I can tell you if you ask me. If you don't ask me, fine, but I like feedback in real time. It's like being a chef. How
It's
does it taste?
it's a valuable experience, especially if somebody listening felt something impactful and it's going to change their experience. If they can verbalize in the moment how what you said or I said or somebody else said made them feel, or what they heard or what they saw, they can integrate the information more and it becomes more a part of me. My friend Angus loves to say, I laughed, I cried, I ate popcorn, it became part of me. Right? So when we can verbalize those experiences a little bit more in the moment, it's easier to transfer from short-term to long-term memory when we can synthesize that information. I do this in the office frequently with people when they on the table after an entrainment session. Is I'll ask them, what did you notice that was new or different, and leave it as an open-ended question and let them tell me, because sometimes it just looks like they're just lying on the table and the breath is there and they're breathing deeply and it doesn't look like much is happening. And then they sit up and like, oh, I felt this, and I felt the energy move here, and I felt my breath move here, and I felt this spaciousness inside of me, and I felt calm and at ease, and then I felt a little bit of sadness come up, and then I wanted to laugh, and and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. You can't, because from the outside you can't tell what somebody's internal experience is, and when they can start to express or verbalize that, it becomes more real in the moment. What's not just a figment of our imagination. Well, we know that everything in the world is literally a figment of our imagination, but that's a whole other conversation for another time.
The figments that we want to come to real life.
Yeah.
I remember being on your table, and I remember those exact feelings, what you were just talking about. I remember when you were in the Newmarket office, and I think we were coming to you like 3 times a week or something.
Something like that.
Wow,
A couple times a week at least, yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing feeling. So just to give a little bit about pitch plug there. So is there anything else that you want to say about small talk before we go into a little bit of our...
Done a little bit of, I think we've done some small talk with a little bit deeper
right
stuff as well as the small talk. So I think that's a great place to wrap up our small talk. All right.
Anything else you'd like to talk about, Dr. Energy?
I think I have done all the small talk and slightly deeper talk that I'd like to do for today. You?
Well, yep, I'm good. I think we can move right on to other parts of our business for the rest of the day. And I want to thank you for being as awesome as always. And thank you for the compliment. It goes a long way when you tell a girl that you like their hair and their tan and their blue top.
One thing I have learned over the years, compliment the women in your life constantly.
Thank you. And
it
I
goes
will
a
talk
long
to you
way, and it needs to be heartfelt, and it is always heartfelt.
Thank you. And I want to make sure that I have a lot of that coming to me, because like I said, when you're growing your gray hair out, you really need the love. Really helps. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, ciao, everybody. We'll see you on the other side.
Ciao.